Hello everyone, welcome back to Vaishya's YouTube channel. This is Pooja Sharma and I'm back with the next chapter of this textbook. So before we begin, here are the details of Vaishya AS on the screen. So you can contact on this number for your enrollment details, and if you have any doubts regarding your UPSC preparation, you can also email us and visit our YouTube channel for more such videos. Let's begin. So this chapter deals with the movements of ocean water, and as we all know that ocean water is dynamic, it is not constant, so it keeps changing, or there's always this motion present in it. So its physical characteristics like temperature, density, salinity, and external forces like the forces from the moon, sun, winds, they influence the movement of the ocean water. So the horizontal and the vertical motions are more common in water bodies, and the horizontal motion, they'll refer to the ocean currents and waves. That will be like this, or wait, I'll just show it to you with so the horizontal motions will be like this, like wave types, and the vertical movements will be when it rises upwards. It will go up and down like this. So ocean currents are the continuous flow of huge amount of water in a definite direction, while the waves are horizontal motions of water. So water moves ahead from one place to another through the help of ocean currents, while the water in the waves, it will not move, but the wave will the wave trains will move ahead. So the vertical motion refers to the rise and fall of water in the ocean and seas, which is called tides. So due to the attraction of the sun and the moon, the ocean water is raised up and down, and it will fall down twice a day. So the upwelling of water, cold water from subsurface, and the sinking of the surface water, it also forms vertical motions of the ocean water. As you can see over here in the picture, the upwelling, it's going upwards. So first we'll read about waves. So as we all know, waves look something like this. 1 minute, I'll just So as we all know that the waves look like this. So waves are actually the energy and not the water as such. It will move across the ocean surface. So over here they are showing us the wave movement. So what happens is, water particles only travel in small circles as the wave passes. Can you see these small circles? So these are the water particle motion. So wind provides energy to the waves to move, and the wind causes waves to travel in the ocean, and the energy is also released on the shorelines. So if you people have experienced this, when you're standing near the shore and when a wave comes and hits a person who's sitting, or a little kid who does not have that much balance, they'll tend to fall when the wave will hit because of the energy that it brings along. So the motion of the surface water, it seldom affects the stagnant deep bottom water of the ocean. So what happens is, on the surface the water will keep moving and it will be seen to our eyes, but deep down in the depths of the ocean, the water will be constant. It will not have any type of such movement. All this happens only on the surface. So as a wave approaches the beach, it will slow down. Obviously it will retreat backwards towards the ocean after hitting the shoreline. So this is due to the friction occurring between the dynamic water and the sea floor. So when the depth of water is less than half of the wavelength, so this is our wavelength, and because of this, what will happen, the wave will break. That's why it will become slow. So the largest waves are found in open oceans. So waves continue to grow larger as they move, and they absorb energy from the wind, and then most of the waves, they are caused by the wind driving against the water. There will be one force which will be exerted opposite to the flow of water. So when a breeze or wind of 2 knots or less blows over a calm water, small ripples will be formed. Can you see over here? These are ripples. So these small ripples, they'll form and they'll start growing as the wind speed increases until the white caps appear in the breaking waves. So waves, they may travel up to thousands of kilometers before rolling towards the seashore, and they'll be breaking and dissolving as surf. So a wave's size and shape will reveal its origin. What happens is the steep waves, they are fairly young ones and they'll be caused by the local wind. Slow and steady waves, they'll originate from far away places which can sometimes be from another hemisphere also. So the maximum wave height, it is determined by the strength of the wind, how much the wind will lift the water or push the water. So how long it blows and the area over which it blows in a single direction. Waves also travel because the wind will push the water, as I said now, in its course, while gravity pulls the crest of the waves downward. So as you can see, crest, this top portion, inverted U, is called the crest. So they are telling the trough is rising and then the crest is falling downwards. So the falling water pushes the former trough upwards. So you can see, right, this motion, it's going up and then down, up and then down. So the falling water pushes the former trough upward and the wave moves to a new position, which will be further than the previous position. So the actual motion of water beneath the surface will be circular, as we saw in the previous diagram also. So it will indicate that things are carried up and forward. Two things are happening over here. It is getting carried up also, it is moving ahead also. So you can see there is a change of movement also and there is change in height also. So it indicates that things are carried up and forward as the wave approaches and down and back as it passes. So now we will read about the characteristics of waves. So first we come to the point of wave crest and trough. So the highest and the lowest points of a wave are called in the crest and the trough. So you can see the highest, the inverted U is crest and our normal U shape is our trough. Then we have the wave height. So it is the vertical distance. Vertical distance is this straight 90-degree line. So it is the vertical distance from the bottom of a trough to the top of a crest of a wave. How can I show it to you? Over here, see, height. So wave amplitude, so it is 1/2 of the wave height. So you can see amplitude is this 1/2. So wave period is nothing but the time interval between two successive wave crests or the troughs as they pass as a fixed point. So the time which it takes to form the next crest is nothing but the wave period. So wavelength, it is the horizontal distance between two successive crests. So as you can see in the picture over here, from this crest to this crest, it is the distance between them, horizontal distance. Then we have the wave speed, which is nothing but the rate at which the wave will move through the water, is measured in knots, like 2 knots per meter or something like that. Then we have the wave frequency, which is the number of waves which will pass at a given point during 1 second time interval. Like for example, how we calculate our pulse rate per minute and all that, no? Same way we'll have this wave frequency. Then we have tides. So the periodical rise and fall of the sea level once or twice a day. Rise and fall is this going up and then falling down. So once or twice a day, mainly due to the attraction of the sun and the moon, is called a tide. Over here, this second part of the sentence is it holds a lot of importance, because it is because of the attraction of the sun and the moon, because of which the high tide and the low tides which take place. So movement of water is caused by meteorological effects. So winds and the atmospheric pressure, it will keep changing, and these are called as surges. Surges are not like regular tides, and the study of tides is very complex spatially and temporally, and it has great variations in the terms of frequency, magnitude and height. So the moon's gravitational pull, so as you can see over here, gravitational pull of the moon, to a great extent and to a lesser extent of the sun's gravitational pull, are the major causes for the occurrences of tide. So as you can see in the picture over here, can you see this light blue color circle? What happens is the gravitational pull of the moon will cause a high tide. That's why you can see this is a more thicker border over here, okay. But the gravitational pull of the sun will not be that much as that of the moon. So you can see over here that it is slightly thinner than the high tide. So that's why here there occurs low tide, and here high tides will occur in this region, these two regions. So another factor is the centrifugal force. So this force acts to the counterbalance of the gravity. It's like gravity is one force which is exerting towards one place, and then we have the centrifugal force which is exerting towards it, like that. So together the gravitational pull and the centrifugal force, they are responsible for creating two major tidal bulges on the earth. So as you can see over here, this tidal bulge, can you see oval it's like egg shape oval type. So this gravitational force over here, and then we have the centrifugal force which is acting towards the left. The gravitational force is towards the right, and this is acting towards the left. So because of that, what is happening, this is the resultant tidal bulges at the either corners. So on the side of the earth facing the moon, a tidal bulge occurs, while on the opposite side, through the gravitational attraction of the moon is less, as it is farther away, and the centrifugal force causes tidal bulge on the other side. So over here it is not that much pronounced how much it is showing in this picture. It is like a shape of the eye. Here also it is something like that only, but they are not showing us in that shape. So wherever it is pulling more on the left and the right side, here this region will face high tides, and here where you can see less distance, this is our low tide. So the tide generating force is the difference between the two forces, that is the centrifugal force and the gravitational attraction of the moon. So on the surface of the earth nearest to the moon, pull or the attractive force of the moon will be greater than the centrifugal force, and there is no and so there is a net force which is causing a bulge towards the moon. As you can see over here, it is telling that the bulge of water, it is greatly exaggerated. See, moon is over here, so towards that direction the gravitational pull from the moon is so much that you can see this type of bulge, how much pronounced it is over here. So on the opposite side of the earth, the attractive force is less. Can you see over here, this is closer towards the earth, so as it is farther away from the moon. And one more thing is, the earth itself, only this side of the earth will have this gravitational pull, the other side will be covered. So that is the reason why the attractive force will be less on the other side. So because of that, it is dominant. So hence there is a net force away from the moon. So it creates the second bulge away from the moon, which will be a low tide. So on the surface of the earth, the horizontal tide generating forces are more important than the vertical forces in generating these tidal bulges. So over here you have to keep this in mind. Horizontal tide generating forces are more important. So the tidal bulges on the wide continental shelves, they have a greater height, and when the tidal bulges will hit the mid-oceanic islands, they'll become low. So the shape of the bays, estuaries along a coastline can also magnify the intensity of the tides. Also, we'll see that funnel shaped bays are greatly, they change the tidal magnitudes. So when the tide is channeled between islands or into bays and estuaries, they are called as tidal currents. So here you can see in this diagram, they are properly telling us the combined gravitational pull of the sun and the moon. So moon is over here and we have the sun over here. So you can see the place where moon is absent over here, there is low tide, but here moon is present over here. So you can see how this bulging part occurs over here. So then we have types of tides. So the tides, they vary in their frequency, direction and movement from place to place and also from time to time. So they can be grouped into various types based on their frequency and how many times they occur in one day or in 24 hours based on their height. So tides are based on frequency, which is semi-diurnal tide. So the most common tidal pattern is featuring two high tides and two low tides each day. So this happens over here in the tides of Bay of Fundy, which is in Canada. So as you can read over here, the tidal bulge is 15 to 16 meters. There are two high tides and two low tides every day. So the successive high or the low tides, they are approximately of the same height, and then we have the diurnal tide. So there is only one high tide and one low tide during each day, and the successive high and the low tides are approximately of the same height. So over here they are 2, over here there is only single. Then we have the mixed tide. So in mixed tide, what will happen is they will have variations in height which are known as mixed tides. So these tides generally occur along the west coast of North America and also on many islands of the Pacific Ocean. So we also have tides which are based on the sun and moon and also the earth position. So the height of rising water, which is high tide, varies appreciably depending upon the position of where the sun and the moon is placed with respect to the earth. So there are two types. One is spring tides and the neap tides. So they come under this category. So the spring tides, what happens is the position of both the sun and the moon in relation to the earth has direct bearing on the tide height. So if you can see in this picture over here, spring tides, you can see the sun is over here, we have a new moon over here, and over here there is a full moon. So wherever you can see the presence of moon, you can see there is high tide. They have marked it over here, and over here you can see there is low tide. Now what happens is when the sun, the moon and the earth are in a straight line, you can see these all three are forming a straight line. So the height of the tide will be higher. Along that line only the height of the tide will be higher. So these are called spring tides and they occur twice a month, one on a full moon period and one will be during a new moon period. This is pretty much easy to remember, so I don't think you people will have difficulty in remembering this. Next we have the neap tides. So what happens is normally they are 7 days in a week. So what will happen is there is a 7-day interval between the spring tide and the neap tides, weekly basis. So at this time the sun and the moon are at right angles to each other. So you can see they are forming right angles, if you can see correctly. And the forces of the sun and the moon tend to counteract one another. So over here what will happen, there will be sun's force also, gravitational pull, and there will be moon ka gravitational pull also. Here what was happening, all three is taking place in a straight line. Here what is happening, from here also the sun is pulling and from here also the sun will be pulling, but the only thing is wherever the moon is, over there will be more exaggerated gravitational pull, because we have seen in the previous slides that the sun will cause only lesser gravitational pull. So the moon's attraction through more than twice as strong as the sun is diminished by the counteracting force of the sun's gravitational pull. So once in a month, when the moon's orbit is closest to the earth, which is called as a perigee, usually high and low tides will occur when it is near the earth's orbit. So during this time the tidal range will be greater than normal. Then what will happen, 2 weeks later, when the moon is farthest away from the earth, which is the apogee, the moon's gravitational force will be limited and the tidal ranges are less in their average height, because the distance between the moon and the earth will be more. So when the earth is closest to the sun, which is the perihelion, around 3rd January each year, tidal ranges are also much greater, with usually high and usually low tides. When the earth is farthest from the sun, which is the aphelion, what will happen, around 4th July each year, tidal ranges are much less than the average, because it will be away from the sun. So the time between the high tide and the low tide, when the water level is falling, is called as the ebb. And then the time between the low tide and the high tide, when the tide is rising, it is called the flow or flood. So, importance of tides. So, since tides are caused by the earth, moon, sun position, all three play a major important role, which are known accurately, the tides can be predicted well in advance. So, this helps the navigators and fishermen plan their activities. And then the tidal flows are of great importance in navigation. So the tidal heights, they are very important, especially during the harbors which are near the rivers and within the estuaries which are having shallow bars at the entrance. So this will prevent the ships and the boats from entering into the harbor. Next, the tides are also helpful in desilting the sediments and also in removing polluted water from the river estuaries, because they'll push away the water and then that water will carry all the sediments along with it. Also, tides are used in electrical power projects and all that, and it helps to generate electrical power in Canada, France, Russia and China. So a 3 megawatt tidal power project at Durga Dhoni in Sundarbans of West Bengal is under the way. So you can see this article over here. The power panel asked MNRE to set up pilot tidal power projects. So you can go ahead and read about this. So it is both in Bengal and Gujarat. So characteristics of ocean currents. So currents are referred to by their drift. Drift is nothing but change in movement or something like that. So usually the currents are strongest near the surface and they may attain speed over 5 knots. So at depths, what will happen, the currents are generally slow with speeds less than 0.5 knots, because what will happen, as I said earlier, in the depths the water will not move that much how much it moves on the surface, mainly because of the winds. So we refer to the speed of a current as its drift, and drift is measured in the terms of knots. So the strength of a current, it refers to the speed of the current. A fast current is considered strong. So a current is usually strongest at the surface because of the wind and all that, and decreases in strength, that is its speed, with depth. So this sentence is very important. So most currents have speed which is less than or equal to 5 knots. Then we'll see about ocean currents. So ocean currents are like river flow in oceans. They represent a regular volume of water in a definite path and direction. It will keep moving in the same direction. So ocean currents are influenced by two types of forces, which is the primary forces that will initiate the water movement, and then we have the secondary forces that will influence the currents to flow. So the primary forces that will influence the currents are the heating up by the solar energy, then we have wind, then we have gravity and the Coriolis force. So heating by solar energy, it causes the water to expand. So that is why what happens is, near the equator, the ocean water will be about 8 centimeters higher in level than in the middle latitudes because of this expansion of water. So this causes a very slight gradient and the water will tend to flow down the slope. So the wind which is blowing on the surface of the ocean, it will push the water to move. It will exert a force. So the friction between the wind and the water surface, it will affect the movement of the water body in its course. So the gravity will tend to pull the water down and the pile and create gradient variation. So next we'll read about the Coriolis force, which intervenes and causes the water to move to the right in the northern hemisphere. Can you see the direction of these blue arrows? It is moving towards the right, okay, in the northern hemisphere. And as you can see, it is moving towards the left. Can you see these blue arrows which are moving towards the left in the southern hemisphere? So these large accumulations of water and the flow around them are called as gyres. So these produce large circular currents in all the ocean basins, and we know very well that Coriolis force is also related with cyclones and the movement of cyclones because of this circular currents. So differences in water density will affect the vertical mobility of ocean currents, and water which will have high salinity, it will be denser than the water with low salinity. And what will happen, the same way the cold water will be more denser than the warm water. It's same like how we read about winds, how the warm air will rise up because it will become light, and the cool air will descend downwards. So denser water tends to sink while relatively lighter water tends to rise. So cold water ocean currents will occur when the cold water at the poles will start sinking, and slowly it will start moving towards the equator. How air or wind moves from high pressure to low pressure area, and again from low pressure to high pressure area, same way the water currents also, the ocean currents will also behave the same way. Warm water currents will travel out from the equator towards the poles to replace the sinking cold water. So types of ocean currents. So the ocean currents may be classified based on their depth as surface currents and deep water currents. So as you can see in the picture over here, surface currents and these deep ocean currents. So the surface currents, they constitute about 10% of the water in the ocean, and these waters are the upper 400 meters of the ocean. The deep water currents will make up the other 90% of the ocean water, which will be in the depths. So these waters move around the ocean basins due to variations in density and gravity. So deep water will sink into the deep ocean basins at a higher latitude, whereas the temperatures that are cold enough to cause the density, it will increase. So ocean currents can also be classified based on their temperature as cold currents and warm currents, as you can see in the picture over here. So cold currents will bring cold water into warm water areas, and these currents are usually found on the west coast of continents in low and middle latitudes. So on the east coast, what will happen in higher latitudes and in the northern hemisphere also, we can see this. Then the warm currents, they'll bring warm water into cold water areas and are usually observed on the east coast of the continents in low and middle latitudes. So in the northern hemisphere, they are found on the west coast of the continents in the high latitudes. As you can see in the picture over here, this red belt is our warm current, and then the blue one is our cold current. So major ocean currents. So major ocean currents are greatly influenced by the stresses which are exerted mainly by the prevailing winds and the Coriolis force. So the oceanic circulation pattern, it roughly corresponds to the Earth's atmospheric circulation. As I said, wind and the water circulation is almost the same. So the air circulation over the oceans in the middle latitudes, it will be mainly anticyclonic, backwards. The clock will move like this. Anticyclonic is backwards. So it will be more pronounced in the southern hemisphere than in the northern hemisphere. The oceanic circulation pattern also corresponds with the same. So at higher latitude, what will happen, when the wind will flow mostly cyclonic, the ocean circulation will follow this pattern. So in regions of pronounced monsoonal flow, the monsoon winds will influence the current movements. And due to the Coriolis force, the warm currents from the lower latitudes, they'll tend to move to the right in the northern hemisphere, and in the southern hemisphere obviously towards the left. So due to the Coriolis force, the warm currents from the oceanic circulation transports heat from one latitude belt to another, and in the same way the heat will also get transported because of the collision of molecules by the general circulation of the atmosphere. So the cold waters of the Arctic and the Antarctic circles, they'll move towards the warmer water in tropical and equatorial regions. So while the warm waters of the lower latitudes will move polewards. So the major ocean currents in the world are shown over here, as you can see in this picture. So this is very important. There are different types of ocean currents. Then we have the effects of the ocean current. So ocean currents have a number of direct and indirect influences of human activities. So the west coast of the continents in tropical and subtropical latitudes are bordered by cool waters, but not close to the equator because it will be warm. Their average temperatures will be relatively low with a narrow diurnal and annual ranges. Then there will be the presence of fog, but generally the areas are arid. West coast of the continents in the middle and the higher latitudes, they'll be bordered by warm waters, and this will cause a distinct marine type of a climate. Then they are characterized by cool summer seasons and relatively mild winters with a narrow annual range of temperatures. So the warm currents, they'll flow parallel to the east coast of the continents in tropical and subtropical latitudes. So over here you can see whatever you can see in red are our warm currents, and whatever you can see in blue in the southern hemisphere and in the extreme north, you will see blue arrows, which are the cold currents. So this results in warm and rainy climates. So these areas will lie in the western margins of the subtropical anticyclones. So the mixing of warm and cold currents, it will help to replenish the oxygen and favor the growth of planktons, which are an essential food source for fishes. So they are the primary food for fish population. That's why what happens is, the area where the warm and the cold current will meet, that will be the best fishing grounds of the world. So they will exist mainly in these mixing zones where the cold current and the warm current will meet. So that's all for today. I'll be back with the next chapter. Make sure that you like and share, and also subscribe to our channel for more such videos, and please leave a one-liner comment in the comment section below as a feedback or something like that. Until then, all the best and study well. Thank you.